final webinar in our presentation, in our Faith Leaders series. It has been an awesome journey. I appreciate, I've already said this, but I'll say it again. Every one of you, I see some familiar names. Some of you have been to every single webinar in this series. Some of you have been to maybe one, or some of you, this is your very first one. I appreciate your sacrifice. I appreciate you coming out and learning a little bit, or giving us an opportunity to share some information with you that maybe it's new, maybe it's a refresher. All the same, we just appreciate the opportunity to engage with you in this way. When we made this series, when we created the series, we weren't sure what the reception would be. I'm thankful that the registration and the feedback has blown out of the water my expectations of what could be possible in this series. And so I just appreciate you. Each session, as you know, some of you know, you've been here every session. We've given a platform for faith leaders that have some best practice tips that work for them as they are trying to do this very important anti-stigma work against mental health, just breaking the stigma about learning more about mental health conditions, making it okay for you to explore treatment options, being open about talking about mental health in your congregations. We know that each one of you who are connected to a faith organization, we know that mental health touches your congregations in one way or the next. We know that 1 in 5 individuals, I know we've been saying this throughout, but you can never hear this statistic too much. 1 in 5 individuals are living with a mental health condition. And that means that the person that when we're in person, we sit next to, the person that we engage with on, in one service to the next, when we go to a synagogue, when we go to mosque, may be impacted by mental health in some way themselves personally, or a loved one is living with a mental health condition. And so it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we are as well equipped as possible to make our congregants, our other parishioners, whatever the term it is for you, make sure that we're feeling comfortable exploring our own spirituality, but then also feel comfortable in getting the support that we need for very real life challenges. And I know that in all of the congregations in this interfaith audience that we've generated, we know that you have whole teams that are built to address life situations, bereavement, and things like that. But the whole point why we're in the room is so that we can then begin to make mental health a part of the teams, these health teams that we create to support our congregants. And so in our fourth installation series, whatever, in our fourth webinar in this series, we have 2 very awesome people who are going to kind of bring the whole conversation that we've had up until this point full circle. And I will lead into that presentation, but first, or I will introduce them in a second. But first, what I want to say is, if you've enjoyed this series, certainly I appreciate you in advance I appreciate you for filling out the survey or the poll at the end of each presentation. And I will thank you in advance for filling out the poll at the end of this presentation. Just stay on the last 5 minutes. I promise you, just give me 5 minutes and you can be able to fill out that poll. But I appreciate that information. But if you liked what you've learned so far through the series, and if you have some best practice tips that you think that would be good to share with other faith leaders, or if you'd like to help shape the direction of our Faith Leader Conference for next year, get in touch with me at ctaylorjackson@namibaltimore.org. I have your email because you registered. And so what I'll do is I'll send out a formal email just thanking you for being a part of this series in one way or the next, and then also sharing our Faith Leader Toolkit, which I have talked about each session. I will give you that electronic copy, and I'll also give you an option if you wanted the hard copy. We can work to get you a hard copy of that same toolkit. But yes, be in touch with me if you want to present. If you have some really good information that you'd like to present to other faith leaders, be in touch with me. If you want to help plan future conferences, be in touch with me too. I need all the help that I can get. I welcome all the help that I can get. And so it is with that we are about to start our fourth workshop in this series with our presentation today. And so what I will do is I will introduce our speakers today. Let me actually show you the title screen because it might be nice to see that. Okay. So here's my welcome, and immediately following, it's connecting the dots, and it doesn't end with us, presented by Pastor Lisa Connors and Belinda Koch. Okay, and then following that, it says Q&A and a wrap-up will be following, but the presentation today is going to be very interactive, and you're actually going to be prompted to share. So don't be afraid to be in the chat and interact with Belinda and Pastor Connors, because that's what they want. And certainly there will be specific prompts for that. So I just wanted to share that. But now on to our presentation. Let me go ahead and read their bios. So Lisa Connors is the Associate Pastor of In His Image International Ministry, Inc. She is a licensed Bachelor of Social Worker, licensed clinical professional counselor, national certified counselor, board certified coach, master addiction counselor, certified clinical trauma professional. And Ms. Connors is a certified grief counselor specialist. She's also certified in thanatology, which is the study of bereavement. And her co-presenter, Belinda Koch, has a master's degree, or has a master's in education in counseling, master's of education in counseling, with an emphasis on clinical mental health. She's also certified in thanatology and is a national certified counselor. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Pastor Connors and Belinda.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for being here. I think someone put in a chat box, Happy Tuesday to you all. So I want to start with this title page. It says connecting the dots, and it doesn't end with us. And as you know, that the series said it starts with us. And when we think about the faith community as a whole, it does not end with us, because we do not operate in silos. Many of us in our faith community, sometimes we want to operate in silos. And I'm not saying it's anybody on this webinar series today, but we don't operate in silos. It's a collective and connected effort to include therapists, counselors, artists, activists, family, friends, community, for all of us to come together, everyone being a part of the fight, because we do not walk alone. So I wanted to let us know that although it says it starts with us, it does not end with us. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with an opening reading. And so Belinda and I like to do interactive things, and she's going to go next after I read this. But I'm going to share this with you. It's called Life's Tug of War. Life can seem ungrateful and not always kind. Life can pull at your heartstrings and play with your mind. Life can be blissful, simply happy and carefree. Life can put beauty in the things that you see. Life can place challenges right at your feet. Life can make good of the hardships that you meet. Life can overwhelm you and make your head spin. Life can reward those determined to win. Life can be hurtful and not always fair. Life can surround you with people who care. Life clearly does offer its ups and its downs. Life's days can bring you both smiles and frowns. Life teaches us to take the good with the bad. Life is a mixture of happy and sad. So take the life that you have and give it your best. Think positive, be happy, let God do the rest. And so I wanted to share that with you. It's called Life's Tug of War. So if you want to put anything in the chat box based on what I was reading today, if anything stood out for you or was significant for you, we'll give you a chance to put in the chat box. And while you're doing that, I'm going to say next slide, and then I'll give it to Belinda.
Hi, guys. So Clarissa, you did such a great job, but it is pronounced Cook. And she tried, y'all. She really tried. And she practiced, and everyone always does. So I do appreciate that. So yeah, so thank you guys so much for allowing me to come from down here in Alabama to come and talk with you guys. And I love that we get to connect over the internet this way. So I want you guys to read these real quick. Look at the questions, take a few seconds and just kind of tell me some answers. What do you think? Is this faith or science? You know, what do I need to know about serving our faith community? These are kind of some reflections. Like we said earlier, we love reflections. So we want you to kind of think about what you've already kind of went through the last 3 weeks, what you think we might talk about. What are some things that, can you answer these questions for me in the chat box? Roll Tide, yes, thank you.
Someone said both faith and science.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anyone else?
How do we build dynamic teams? I like that question.
We don't see any more in the chat box.
Are you typing
Go with
slow?
the next.
That's
Yeah, they
there
are.
we go. Cross
Cross
discipline.
disciplines.
Yes, there we go.
All right, y'all, keep them
Yes.
coming. Keep them coming.
Fun coming. Yes.
Yes. This
Winning
winning
team members.
team.
Yes, we're gonna
Yeah.
find those. Love
See
that.
how you see how Belinda and I we finishing each other's sentences.
Yes, it is faith and science. Next steps will create space for sharing and supporting. Yes. Oh,
Yes.
see, they already know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Don't worry about
We got it now. We going. We
Yes.
rolling now, Belinda.
Beautiful, beautiful.
All right.
I love that. All right, Clarissa, let's go on to the next one. Beautiful. All right, reflection questions. Go ahead for me.
So I definitely want you all to think about this reflection question as well. Certainly when I posed this reflection question and Belinda and I was talking about it, it reminds me of the chicken and the egg. And so think about this. If you want to put something in the chat box, I'll give you a chance to put it in the chat box. But while you're thinking about it, I'm going to just say a few things about this reflection question. So when there is a loss of faith, confidence, or trust in one's God, and I'd say one's God because it depends on where people are represented today, does that contribute to a person's comorbidities, such as their mental health or substance use disorders? Does it contribute to grief, loss, bereavement? Does it contribute to hopelessness, helplessness? So I definitely want you to think about that. And someone might say, because of my loss in faith, is that a reason for the comorbidities? Is it a reason why I'm experiencing all of the things that I'm experiencing? Is it a reason why I might be diagnosed with a mental health or substance use disorder? Because of my loss of faith, is that the reason why I'm going through grief and loss and hopelessness and helplessness? So somebody might ask themselves that question. And so I want you to really think about this reflection question. Also, is all that I'm experiencing impacting my faith and spiritual journey? Is it impacting my relationship with God? So does these comorbidities also impacts a person's faith? So if a person is experiencing helplessness and hopelessness, it may impact their faith. If they have depression or anxiety, or they may be dealing with psychosis, or they may be dealing with schizophrenia, it could impact their faith. And so, as I said before, is it the chicken or is it the egg? And so I want us to really think about this, because each one might impact the other. And so sometimes people say it's one or the other, but I want to say today it's not one or the other. It can be both. And when we look at this, it's not black or white. It also could be gray. So certainly I want us to really reflect on that. Does a person's loss of faith contribute to their mental health and substance use disorders, or their grief and loss or hopelessness? Or does that hopelessness and being diagnosed with a mental health or substance use disorder, does that impact their faith? Next slide.
There are some really great comments in the chat box. Yes, you guys are doing wonderful. Okay, so the question, is it faith or science? So the reason this question came to me is I love this. So I went to our pastor. I just recently started a new support group here in our community. It was a missing thing that needed it, and it's a grief support group. So I went to my pastor and I was like, hey, I need you guys to support me in this. And he's like, well, come on, let's talk and tell me what you need. And so I went there and I met with him, met with our associate pastor, and kind of did my spiel of, hey, this is what I want to use. This is a curriculum I want to need. And I used a lot of Dr. Alan Wolfeld's work in my own companion work. And my associate pastor looked at me and goes, is this faith or science? And I looked at him and I said, yes. Right? He's like, is this a Christian thing or a science thing? And I'm like, yes, it is. And so we had to do a little bit of grief for education there on how these all work together. Right? It's not one or the other. It's all connected in some form or fashion. And so that's where this question came from. Is it faith or science? Because people just don't know. They think it has to be one or the other. And so the beauty of being able to connect all of this together is so wonderful. And like I said, I'm trying to look at some of your comments in there too. So go on to the next slide for me.
Mhm.
So the next slide is, what do we need to know about serving in our faith community? So there are several things that we need to know about serving in our faith community. First of all, is having a basic knowledge about behavioral health, which means mental health and substance use. It's just the basic knowledge. And when we think about this, as Belinda was talking about, it's both, really having that basic knowledge about what it looks like. How does it feel? When people are showing up in our faith communities, how do we respond to them? It's also having reliable resources. And the reason why I say reliable resources is because when I link people up to services, I also make sure that the service is still operable. Because sometimes giving somebody a phone number, the number you have reached is no longer in service. That's not a good thing. And so definitely make sure that we have reliable sources. The other thing is being equitable and ensuring everyone has access to services and treatment, across the board, being equitable, making sure people have access. I used to work for an organization and we used to close at 4:00. I'm like, this is not good. That's not equitable. Many people get off from work at 5 or 6 o'clock. So being equitable, ensuring everyone has access to the services. And it's also about being culturally humble. It's suspending what we know and what we think we know about people's cultures, about someone. So it's embracing and understanding the uniqueness of each person that is within your faith community. So that's how we go about serving those in our faith communities. Next slide.
Yeah, we had a great comment about NAMI in Howard County. Says faith leaders need to be convinced of the need for mental health support. We have struggled with this. So I think that's this amazing thing about this is that this is what we're talking to you guys. You guys have come and talked to us about this, and that's why we feel in this need. Thank you. And Carrie, thank you for posting that Amazon link. I appreciate it. It says, how can I support individuals in my faith community? What would that look like? What do you guys think? How can you support individuals in your faith community? Give me throw out a couple of things for me. Like I said, we love some reflections in here. We're not gonna let you guys just sit back and drink your coffee and hide behind your cameras today.
Yes, put some things in it.
Yes, grief share.
Grief
Good.
share.
There you go. Get educated. Yes, get educated. I love that, Melinda. Thank you. And get to know them.
Mhm.
Have a cup of coffee, right?
Yes.
Your own
Thank you,
story.
Stephanie. Yes.
Stephanie Smith says, share your own story. Build relationships. Oh, you guys got this. Yes. So that is, how can I support individuals in my faith community, right? It always starts with here, and we're going to reach out. Now, what's that going to look like? Like you said, let's go for a cup of coffee. Right? Let me tell you my story. Tell me your story. One of my favorite things to teach people to say is, tell me more. Just tell me more about what is going on in your life. Because once we can hear that story and say, tell me more, then we can get them to where they need to be, right? Because we're going to talk about building our teams and building our referrals, our kind of warm handoff, as we like to call it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Go ahead. Thank you guys. Great conversation.
Next slide. So the next slide is, how do we build dynamic mental health teams? So first of all, this is what I was thinking about. Before we move forward with building those great and wonderful and dynamic mental health teams, I was thinking about, how do we build ourselves first? And so sometimes I have clients that will say, I feel like I'm being selfish when I take care of myself first. So this is the scenario that I give to clients. I say, think about the airplane scenario. In the event of an emergency, who do you put the oxygen mask on first? You put it on yourself first. And so sometimes we're often quick to give to others, but what about our own self-care? So in order to have a dynamic team, first of all, we got to build ourselves first. We also have to think about self-care, self-compassion. How might we get our own needs met? And this is something that I talk about in counseling with my students. I'm like, you're out here, you're doing all this great work and you're helping people, but how do we get our own needs met first, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? What does that look like? Ask yourself, what is my motivation for being part of this mental health team? Who should be on the team? What parts do we need to make it, quote unquote, dynamic? What things are we going to need to build and sustain it? Because we can build it, but how are we going to sustain it? There has to be sustainability as part of this. How much time is invested in building it and need to be invested? You know, everybody want to sit on the sideline. Pastor, I'm with you. I got you. I'm right there with you. But when the rubber hits the road and it's time to do work, I got this to do. I got to take this there. I got to go to the grocery store. So how much time is invested? Because in order to build it and help it remain sustainable, you have to have people that's willing to do it. Who are our partners? Whose buy-in do we need? Is it volunteer? Would there be compensation? It is about being on the same page, because this is the thing that I thought about. A house divided will not stand. So when we think about building a dynamic mental health team, there are no big I's and little U's. Next 2 slides will be Belinda.
All right, so what tools do we need? We're going to go super simple here, guys. This is our step-by-step kind of thing, and then we're going to give you the pretty much the basics. Our first tool that we need is ourself. We need to have open hearts and open minds. Someone said earlier in the chat about people in the faith, they kind of struggle with this, right? Opening our hearts and opening our minds to a new way of thinking is probably the most and very first step we need to do. We need to be willing to say, I don't have the answer, right? One of my favorite things somebody asks is, hey, I got a question for you. Say, well, if I don't have the answer, then Google does, right? So we are going to admit first off that we don't have all the answers. Our pastors, I'm speaking to you guys out there, you know, you're not supposed to have all the answers. So let me go ahead and free you from that guilt, okay? You are not supposed to have it. So I'm going to delegate, but open your heart, open your mind. And then from there, what we can do is we can build that, what we like to call the warm handoff list. And Lisa's going to talk a little bit more about what that means about the warm handoff. Resources. Find those resources in your community. I know when I do my QPR trainings here in Alabama, we always send people to the ASPARC, our Alabama Suicide Prevention and Resource Coalition website. We are always sending them there because we have so many resources on suicide prevention. And then your other faith communities, we need to connect with them. Y'all, I'm going to be drinking coffee all the time, and that's what I love to do. Go and have, I know there are people from multiple faiths on these webinars that have been coming through the last 4 weeks. And I encourage you, reach out to your other faith communities. And I'm not saying just the other denominations in our Christian faith. I mean, other faith members, reach out, build a team, see what their resources are out there, because they may have some amazing people in their congregations and in their communities that can be part of your team also. They may not need to be part of your church people and your synagogue and your mosque. And so we want to do that. And then we want to start building this person's team. Okay, we're going to help these people, help the people that are struggling build their own teams by connecting with their own family and friends. This is that we part. We're going to talk a little bit more about the team building part of it. So tools, open heart, open mind. We're going to make sure we have a warm handoff list, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Resources in your community. I can give the National Suicide Hotline to anybody in any heartbeat. But if I'm not able to give them and I don't have the resources in my community, that's not going to do them any good. So make sure you have your local resources, have the name and the contact information of other faith people in your community and the other faiths, and then family and friends of that person. So, go ahead, go next. All right, so who can assist you? Throw me some ideas in there. Who might serve as your collaborators? I want you guys to really think and put this in a personal, not just some wide, net casting things. Think about it. Give me some ideas on who is going to assist you in your own congregations, in your own community.
A chance to do that. Make it personal, because we don't know your community. So think about who can assist you, who can be your collaborator in the community in which you are serving. So I'll just throw something out there while you all are thinking. Being a pastor, I'm a pastor and I'm also a therapist. So in my community, I live in a rural area. So part of our communities are other faith communities, other therapists, business owners, also community leaders. So what I'm saying is that sometimes we have to go outside the box just a little bit more. How might we include the media and part of this teamwork? Because again, we don't operate in silos. What one person has is going to complement what I have and vice versa. So definitely being part of the faith community and being, yes, Carrie said elected officials, yes, getting them involved, definitely some good things there. Go ahead, Belinda. I'm taking over your slide.
No, you're fine. No, go ahead. Go to the next one.
All right. So go to the next one. So with the next one is, what are the next steps? So I wanted to share this with you. So on June 3rd, 2013, President Obama convened a national conference on mental health at the White House. There were commitments made by various organizations who represented the media, educators, healthcare providers, faith communities, and foundations. So there was a commitment. There was a commitment made to increase understanding and awareness of mental health. So it reminds me, now this was back in 2013, it reminds me that all of our voices need to be heard. And Carrie said elected officials, so important. We must stand up, speak out, and get involved. We have an opportunity, all of us, to promote understanding and awareness that helps us begin to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental illnesses. Recognizing, we can recognize it, but how are we going to respond? We also have to respond appropriately. No more being on the sidelines. So these are our next steps. You know, we want things to happen. We want things to be different, but we can't do it if we're on the sideline. We have to be a part of the game. We got to be a part of the fight. And if we want change, we have to be a part of that change. And so my question to all of us, and I'm not just speaking to you, it's to Belinda and I, Clarissa and everybody else. How committed are we to the call? That's the next step. How committed are we to the call? So I want you to think about that. How committed are you to the call? So I'll give you a second or two to put that in the chat box, and then I'll share this with you. So having a mental health team means developing a training and curriculum for your team. What is that going to look like? First of all, before you can train people, you also need to develop a curriculum. And what is that going to look like? Then the next thing, training persons who's going to be a part of the team, getting that commitment. Because people say, yeah, I really want to do this. I'm with this. But then, as I said before, when the rubber hits the road, I don't have time for this. Also provide resources and support for the team. And then one of the things that I always think about as the next step is having that self-care, that self-compassion component. So developing a curriculum, training people, providing resources and support for the team, also marketing, maybe sustainability, how are you going to keep it going? And then the last thing is having a self-care or self-compassion component. And I know that's not everything in a nutshell, but these are some things to really, really think about. So the last thing before Belinda goes to the next two slides, how committed are you to the call? Next two slides is Belinda.
Yes. And Cynthia, I see your question in the Q&A, and it says, what can be done at churches where there's little or no interest in having a mental health team? And do know that we're definitely gonna address that now. Hopefully we'll address it as we go through here. But yeah, that can be one of the biggest struggles, is when you do have that faith community that just doesn't believe it's, and we're going to talk about the three different parts of the teams and of the human existence. So we're going to run through that. And so, yeah, do know I see your question. All right. When will we begin? Why not now? Right? Why not now? Give me a couple of quick excuses. And I like that word because it's not reasons. Give me a couple of quick excuses why churches don't start now.
Good, Belinda.
No money. Yep. Need training. Good. Lack of understanding. Yes. Lack of interest. Priorities. Our calendar is full. No interest. Yes. Doubt can do it. Exhaustion. Oh, that's a good one. No vision that it's possible. Lack of awareness. Don't think it applies to them. Right? It's taboo.
Mm.
We can pray that away. All right. How many times?
Yes.
Don't forget, I'm from deep South Louisiana. I'm from Louisiana and Alabama. We pray that stuff away, right? We don't have that in our community. We don't need that, right? We don't have crazy people in our family. We don't have crazy people in our church.
Mm.
Too much on my plate. That busy, right? That important busy word. We're all busy nowadays. Go ahead and switch to the next one. Someone else is more qualified to do it. Oh, we're gonna pass the buck to somebody else, right, Cynthia? What you
Good.
trying to do that? Let somebody else do it. That's okay if you're not trained, because we're going to help somebody. So what are you gonna do? We're gonna put these things in action. How do we start now? Neighbors, right? We're gonna go and we're gonna meet with our neighbors. Once again, we're gonna meet our fellow faith leaders. We're gonna meet our fellow community leaders. We're gonna go out there and we're gonna find out who our neighbors are in our area. Opportunities. We are gonna create opportunities. Cynthia, this kind of goes along with what your question is. We're gonna create opportunities for our church to serve the mental health population. Fear, man, that taboo is a big one. When we're talking about we will pray that away. Yes, fear is a big one, right? That's a lot of times what we don't start things. The fear. When I decided to take Pastor Connors grief coaching class, I was so terrified. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm paying this money. I don't know what I've learned, right? But I took that opportunity, and oh my goodness, has that been a huge blessing in my life for the last 2 years. Guys, we have to create opportunities. We cannot wait for them to come to us. We have to go out there and we have to connect with our people. We have to go and make appointments with our faith leaders. I mean, our politicians, like you said earlier. They're not going to come to us. We have to go to them. Create opportunity to hear stories and build a team. And then the word we, W. I love that word, we. One of my biggest things is whenever someone is upset. Think about this. When someone is crying around you and you go, it'll be okay. You'll get through this, right? You're patting them down and you're going, it'll be okay. When actually you're just going, oh my gosh, I'm so uncomfortable. Please stop doing that around me, right? So the importance of taking that I and really building that we is a team building. We're going to get through this together. We're going to find help. We're going to go through our list of our resources that we have. We're going to see where it is that you're comfortable. So neighbors, building opportunities, and we, the team, help them build their team.
All right. So the next two slides is when do we seek help? And I don't like the word referral. I like the word linkages or warm handoff. I don't do referrals. And I'll tell you a story about a referral quickly. So my doctor gave me a referral to go get some blood work done. It took me months to do it. So that's why I don't like referrals. That's why I don't give my clients referrals. I link them to services. I do a warm handoff. So if I'm counseling a person that's going through grief and loss or depression or anxiety, if I need that person to work with a coach, I'll do a warm handoff to Belinda because Belinda is a coach. I'm also a coach as well. So, if Belinda's seeing somebody for counseling, she'll do a warm handoff to me. And so one of the things that I do in the beginning is I tell clients, this is as far as I can take you, but I want to link you up. I want to do a warm handoff with someone who can take you further. And so I don't like the word referral, but I certainly like linkages or warm handoff. And so definitely if you start to notice some of these things that in your faith community, that's when you want to get involved. And like Belinda made a great point, we want to pray it away. I had a situation, where, someone was saying, okay, if people are just having thoughts of death and suicide, we just gonna pray. We're gonna get in a circle, and y'all, we gonna come together. We're gonna link arms. We're gonna bind that demon out. And so, but these things are happening and they're very real. And so right, Yvonne, we need God and we need therapists. We certainly do. So if you start noticing some of these things that are going on or you're seeing it, that is the time to get involved. We can't just stand by or be on the sideline and not be a part of the fight. Next slide. So I want you to look at this. These are some things. And the next one is also. So one of the things that, people will say, and I'll mention the last point, hopelessness and helplessness, no will to live. When people start saying, I just want to give up, my mom is gone, my dad is gone, I want to die. They're telling you, and they're saying it, I think everybody will be okay if I'm not here anymore. And it's just really listening. And I think that is the key thing as we're talking about, it's just to be listeners. And Belinda said, as faith leaders, we don't know everything. As therapists, we don't know everything. So then there is a gap. There is a wedge there. If I'm telling you I don't know everything, and faith leaders don't know everything, but if we put our resources together and we come together and stop working in silos, then together we can be a dynamic force. So listening is the key when all of these things are going, so that you know how to link. So that's why it's really important to have a reliable resource list, so that you can call somebody, say, hey, Lisa, I'm having this, in my faith community, these are some of the things that are going on. I already told her about you. So I want to do a warm handoff, and I'm going to introduce you to one another. That's how we do warm handoff. And so that we know that it's done. Just like I told you about my referral, my doctor ain't gonna follow up with me, but as faith leaders and clinicians, we want to do linkages. We want to do warm handoffs, not just a referral, because when you do a referral, people don't always follow through. Next slide.
And to kind of go along with what Lisa was saying about that linking each other, the fancy word, of course, sometimes we call it is networking, right? So we need to know who our people are too. And so if we're willing to do that, I'll give you a very quick story. Just last night, I have a friend that just started a nonprofit in a very rural part of Alabama with domestic violence victims. And the young lady that's actually helping me as a co-facilitator for my grief group, they live like 10 miles from each other and they work 10 miles from each other, but they have no idea who they are. So now we're going to go and we're going to get a piece of pie. If anybody knows where Greensboro, Alabama is, we're going to eat some pie and we're going to meet. And I'm going to link them two together because of what my co-facilitator and then the nonprofit, what they can provide for each other and build that team in that small rural community of Alabama. Just those two right there are going to be dynamic enough. But because I was willing to listen, get to know what each person is gifted with, right? Yes, God, we need God and therapists because God created therapists. We need to know what each person's gift is so that we can connect those out. So holistic approach. Oh, I love talking about holistic approach. Build connections, accept change, reach out to others, trust instincts. And I do believe that someone in the previous presentations, they talked about the mind, body, and spirit. Some say mind, body, and soul. It's like 3 parts of the human existence, right? And if we can attain to each part, one of the things that can be dangerous in our field is, as mental health providers, we always want to focus on that mental part, right? The mind. If you can get your depression under control, if you can get your anxiety under control, then everything will be great. But then we have our faith community people that are like, no. You need to be praying all the time on those knees, non-stop, right? And then we have the people that want to, no, it's about the body. It's what goes in our body, what we do with our body. And that's what matters all the time. Well, guys, if you only focus on one part of that existence of yourself, you are really denying your full existence. So working towards the mind, the body, the soul, we are going to be talking about our faith. We're going to be seeing where that meaning making comes from. Then we're going to be working on our mental health. We are going to be talking with a therapist, unloading our crap when we have to, right? And then we're going to be working on that body. We're going to be aware of what we're putting into our body. We're going to be taking care of ourselves. We're going to be walking, getting fresh air, because all of that together is what we call a holistic approach, getting together. So, yes.
I wanted to add something to that, Belinda. Also think, Belinda talked about the body, soul, the mind. Don't forget the spirit man, because, this is what I learned when I was, in a ministry before. It said, whichever one you feed will lead. And so if you're not feeding the spirit man, it's a holistic approach. Praying, meditating, reading word, exercising, eating right, sleeping, all of those things. And Belinda, I thank you for making that point. You are denying yourself your whole human existence. And I think Bishop Robinson talked about it in First Thessalonians. We're body, soul, and spirit. We're all of that. And if we're only working on 1/3 of that, then what about the other 2/3? And so it is a holistic approach. So thank you, Belinda, for saying that. Are you good with this slide, Belinda?
I'm good. Go for it.
All right, next slide. So how do we deal with resistance?
No,
so,
we're being aware of our time too, guys. Everybody's precious. Yeah.
So dealing with
resistance. Reach out to us later with questions. So
definitely, we're here. You can, and one of the things, and I can speak for Belinda, if you want us to come alongside you, we're here. We're going to support. We're going to work with you if you need us to. We're extending ourselves. And so I'm speaking for you, Belinda.
That's all right.
So first of all, dealing with resistance. First of all, we want to acknowledge the person. So the person who may have a mental health disorder, substance use disorder, the person is not their illness. The person is not their disorder. If there could be other factors that's involved, it could be biology, it could be neurochemistry that's off, and it may not be the fault of that person or the family or someone else. And so we have to help people overcome the stigma and the shame. And sometimes, people think that they're the anxiety, or they are the depression, or they are the schizophrenia. And so the important piece is acknowledging the person. Remember, the person may have a mental health or substance use disorder. The person is not the mental health or substance use disorder. Recognize and acknowledge there is a problem. Resistance to treatment may come from the fact that people don't think they have a problem, or they don't have a mental health or substance use problem. And so really helping people acknowledge that there is something going on, helping individuals understand that effective treatment is available for them for issues that may be troubling them. And I heard someone saying, or saw someone say in the chat box, it's almost like when I grew up in my household, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And it's almost the same thing with our faith communities. What go on under this roof, it needs to stay under this roof. And we're not going to allow anybody else to come and be a part of this. Also addressing stigma. And I talked about stigma and shame. So I sometimes hear people saying stuff like, that person crazy, or they bipolar. And people don't even know what bipolar is. I think she bipolar. Or they 2 sandwiches short of a picnic basket, or the elevator don't go all the way up to the top floor. And so stigma is a real significant part of dealing with mental health and substance use disorders. And so it encompasses that public stigma, where the general population do respond to people who have mental health disorders and substance use disorders. And it's the self-stigma. It's the prejudice that people embrace and internalize themselves. And so what we want to do is address the stigma. So one of the things in our faith communities, we talk about mental health and substance use disorders. Matter of fact, we're very transparent in our faith communities to talk about, my husband who had, a substance use disorder. He talks about openly in the congregation. I talk about my own struggles that I have, because I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. It's when we become ashamed to talk about those things in which we have ourselves been delivered from. So we want to be ready to face some of those challenges when individuals may internalize things, and also what people in our congregations are sharing. Also addressing and validating past experience with medical and mental health professionals. So we want to validate it. So if a person comes to you, I didn't have a great experience with my therapist. Well, my doctor put me on this medication. I didn't know these were the side effects. So we want to validate that for them, instead of saying, well, maybe you just ought to go back and see your doctor. Well, we'll pray about it. Well, we praying for Sister Jones today. She was on that medication. Validate past experience, because they may not have been great experiences. So we want to validate them. We want to address them, and so that we can really help people think through, maybe it is good for me to take medication for anxiety. I'm going to take the medication for anxiety, and I'm also going to be a part of my faith community, and I'm also going to do yoga. I'm also going to take martial art. I'm going to do all of that. So we want to validate that and utilize your mental health team. Your mental health teams are people there who is a valuable resource. They're a valuable resource. Such a team should be comprised of people that can be trusted, not people who gonna go back and say, yeah, y'all know Sister Jones told me that she was on Zoloft and she was on Prozac. No, it has to be people who can be trusted, who will hold people's confidence, you know, who will be there to observe and to be there to hold hands and to be there to validate those experiences. And that's how we begin to deal with resistance. Next slide, please. And then this is the last couple things for me. Religious and faith concepts. You know, again, Belinda, you talked about it. People say, depend on God. You know, yeah, you just don't have faith enough to know that God gonna bring you out of this. You know, definitely engaging in conversation and counsel, you know, really affirming for that person that God has given us the ability to develop all of this, and they're helpful. So again, when a person has a mental health disorder, somebody might say, they may be possessed. You know, we got to cast out that demon. You know, so we really bring our religious and our faith concepts to the table, when in all actuality, it could be a chemical imbalance. Also, when a person has a substance use disorder or they're on drugs, they have an addiction, sometimes in the faith community or in other communities as well, it's seen as a moral failing. Man, you ain't strong enough. You just don't have enough willpower. What's wrong with you? And then the last thing is just the hopelessness. People sometimes avoid or discontinue treatment when they've gone through treatment because they really don't see any hope in it. And so one of the things I do with my clients, when I work with my clients, I open in prayer and I close in prayer. And many of them say, I really appreciate you doing that, because one client said to me, now I know that you're just not relying on your book knowledge or your school knowledge. You're relying on a power greater than you to help me. And so personal stories of people sharing their personal stories is also helping other people really face the hopelessness. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, so closing the loop. I want to go ahead and recognize also Rakita, I love that name, by the way. Transparency. Yes, we have to be willing to share our own story and be transparent about what we struggle with. And confidentiality. Yvonne, like I said, I grew up in all towns I grew up in were small towns. And I understand the need for confidentiality. And that's why sometimes that mental health team that you're building may not be part of your congregation, okay? Because there are certain ethics that we have to face as mental health therapists. And so you may need to build that team from somebody else in your congregation, so that way they don't end up in the same small groups and you're not isolating people. So yeah, so the importance of confidentiality is very important. And that kind of runs into this. So we're going to close it up with linking, reassuring, providing, follow up. This is how we're going to close that loop whenever someone comes to us. And for example, if you're a pastor and someone comes to you and says, man, you know, I've really been having these thoughts of hurting myself, and I have no idea what to do with this. We're going to link them to the mental health providers in our community. We're going to make sure they have that resource of the National Suicide Crisis Line. We're going to make sure they have those things. We're going to reassure them that they are not crazy. We're going to reassure them that that their faith isn't strong enough. We're going to reassure them that I am here for you and I am listening to you. We're going to provide them, once again, we're going to continue to provide them with what they need. You're going to ask them what they need, because I promise you, they know what they need. They just need someone to say that to. And then we are going to follow up. Y'all follow up, follow up, follow up. If I cannot say those words more and more enough, we are going to follow up with our people. Put it in your phone to remind you to follow up. Every time I do a QPR training and every time I do a QPR myself and I ask someone the suicide question, I'm going to follow up with them. Did you make that appointment? You know, we talked about you making that appointment with that therapist from, you know, that we gave you the card. Did you follow up? No, I didn't get around to it. Can I help you with that? Can I take you to that appointment? Afterwards, we'll go get coffee, right? Follow up with them. That is one of the biggest steps that you can do with the team and with their team and with them. So yeah, just remember, you're there, you're not responsible for them, you're with them, all that fun stuff. Build that team. So yeah, those are our big 4 linking objects right there. You're gonna link them all together. So next.
Right. So here are just some questions that you want to think about. So, you can put in a chat box some questions that you also might consider. So these are some things that you certainly want to think about. So some other questions to consider when having a mental health team or when linking individuals to their faith community, to resources, being aware of the urgency or crisis. What is the urgency? What is the crisis that's going on right now? So these are the things that you certainly want to think about in your mind. What role might we play, or what role might you play? What are you noticing in the individuals in your faith community? What other people do you think should be involved with what is going on? Who do you think might be able to support this individual? What resources do you think you're going to need? What other resources might be helpful? And what might be some protective factors that's already working for this person? First of all, they came to you. So I always offer that as a strength with my clients. And I always say to them, you decided to step across that threshold. When you can't think of any strength that you may have, you decided to see me for counseling or for therapy. And so that is a strength. So definitely recognizing those things in a person's life. So really thinking outside the box, thinking about some questions that you might want to consider, as you're working with people. All right, that's it for me. Next slide is the scenario. I don't know if we're going to.
Yeah, and I'm going to be aware of the time, and so we'll be a couple of things. We had these scenarios at the end. You're going to get this presentation, and I encourage you, and Lisa encourage you, go back and read the scenarios. Bring them to your leadership team and say, okay, if we had this come up in our church and in our synagogue or in our mosque or wherever it is your community is, how would we help these people, right? Like, how would we deal with scenario? So we're not, like I said, we're time for scenario. You guys go back and read those for me, okay? So Clarice, if you want to go into the end, that'll be just fine.
We're going to end with this.
Yeah.
This last.
Yeah, and Lisa has a closing reading for us.
So this is a challenge for all of us, and not just for you, but for all of us. It's called Wake Up. It's called Wake Up, my sisters and brothers. Are we slumbering and sleeping? There is no time for murmuring, groaning, or complaining or weeping. Wake up and grab hold of what is true. Grab hold of this message. It just might concern you. Wake up and look and learn and hear. Mental illness is far from over. Indeed, it is very near. Wake up, stand up, shout, and get in a hurry. Don't get complacent, tired, and comfortable, but spread the word stigma. Why worry? Wake up, my people. This is the real deal. Don't sugarcoat, front, or fake it. Just remember to keep it real. Wake up, let's fight together to rid our community of this devastating thing. There's no time to be slow, slowful, and hesitant. Now is the time to ACT. Wake up.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I know that was a Pastor Connors. First off, thank you, Pastor Connors and Belinda Kock. Okay, I'm getting it. For that awesome presentation. I really do appreciate it. For the sake of time, I'm going to move it along to our closing slides. And listen, Pastor Connors and Belinda, if you can put in the chat, you probably have already done this, but just in case, I'm trying not to look at the chat because I don't want to mess anything up on my end. And Rakia, if you are staff member, Rakia, everyone say hey. She's been helping out. Nova just left, but Rakia is still there to help look at the chat. If you guys would put in your contact information, Pastor Connors and Belinda, just as a way to folks to get in touch with you, that would be great because you covered a lot of great information. And we want to make sure that folks get in touch with you. For now, what I will just say is once again, you have learned a lot in this series. We are so very thankful that you joined us for any portion of the series that you came in on. Certainly, we ended with a bang with Pastor Connors and Belinda Kock, but just know, just as a reminder, all of the sessions in this series were recorded and we will make them available on our website. You see here, namibaltimore.org. If you'd like to go and see those, you will all be receiving an email from me. Everyone who attended will be receiving an email from me with an electronic copy of what we call the Faith Toolkit, which is basically a quick reference guide to all the things you might ever need in an emergency situation, and as a way to kind of start the conversation with your congregations. It is a resource that is best used by front office staff. So anyone who answers the phone, anyone who is in charge with spiritual life, the assistant to the pastor themselves, but really the front office staff. That document that I'm going to send you, it's a PDF, that is really for them. And if you would like a hard copy, just reply to me in that email. And again, wait for that email from me, and then we can go from there. But now I will very quickly, thank you so much for your patience. I will stop sharing really quickly. And I will administer the survey or the poll really quickly. I'm launching it just now. So on whatever device you're using, you should see the poll. The poll should have popped up, and I will leave it open for about 30 seconds or so, maybe longer if you're having issues. But I just thank you for completing this poll for me. I really do appreciate that. Once again, I really thank you, Pastor Connors and Belinda Kock, for presenting. And I also appreciate it that you had attended other presentations as a way to kind of help influence some of the work that you were doing today in today's presentation. But I just really appreciate you. And I appreciate everyone who's attended this session. Please stay in touch if you want to, as I said at the top of our time together, if you have a great best practice that you would like to share with other faith leaders, be in touch with me. If you'd like to help plan future faith leader workshops, conferences with NAMI Metropolitan Baltimore, please also be in touch with me. Yes, so, and thank you all I'll leave it open for just a few more seconds for folks to be able to complete this. And then I will close it just a few minutes more, 5 more seconds. Just 5 more seconds. And so, no worries. Okay, thank you all. I'm ending the poll now. Thank you all who participated. And I will be in touch. And as Pastor Connors and Belinda Kock said, it doesn't end with us. So let's keep sharing the good information. Let's keep working. Let's keep supporting our congregations. And so good afternoon, everyone.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.